So, good morning all. Welcome to our third DDI Town Hall. Today we're going to explore the ambitions of the DDI Skills Gateway programme and to highlight some of its early achievements, demonstrating how the programme aims to increase the data literacy skills of the population across Edinburgh and South East Scotland, including innovative activities that are being performed in schools, further education colleges, universities and in work. So allow me to introduce our presenters for the day. Alison Muckersie is the programme lead for the DDI Skills Gateway programme, which is part of the Integrated Regional Employability and Skills, or IRES programme, within the City Region deal. It's a parallel programme to the DDI Innovation Initiative, and its mission is that through new partnership delivery models to ensure that it's meeting the needs of employers and residents, generating a culture that prioritises the development and use of skills as a means to achieve economic growth and tackle inequality. The DDI Skills Gateway is one part of this IRES programme, and it is a multi-partner initiative which aims to develop a strategic approach to increasing the data skills of citizens across the region. Alison has been at the heart of the Edinburgh City Region deal since its inception, having originally led the development team in the City of Edinburgh Council before moving to the university to take up the challenge of her current role. She has a rich and varied background in public policy and management at the interface between local and national government and with the agencies that deliver their mandates. With Alison today, we have Jo Spiller, who is the strategic project lead for the Data Education in Schools programme. Prior to joining this programme, Jo was head of e-learning services within the university and has previously worked both as a teacher and as a data professional. With that introduction, I will hand over to Alison and Jo to present. Before I do though, if we could remember that if we have any questions throughout their presentation, we have a Q&A function. Please pop your questions there and we'll pick them up once Alison and Jo have finished presenting. Over to you, Alison.
Hi there, can you hear me okay now?
Okay, Alison.
Okay, thanks very much. There's a bit of pressure when you're delivering a data literacy program to be good on the IT, and that's where I tend to fall down, so apologies for that. But thanks very much for that introduction, Richie, and to all of you for joining us today. As Richie says, I'm going to talk you through the DDI Skills Gateway program, give you a flavour of how we decided on the remit for our work and what our early achievements have been. And I'm delighted to have Jo alongside me today, who's going to talk in particular about the schools aspect of the programme. So Richie's already talked you through the vision for our programme, and I think it's important just to set that in context. So the DDI, the wider DDI activity is obviously going to generate a lot of economic opportunities for people across this city region. And we wanted to make sure that the people locally were equipped to take up that opportunity, understanding the value of data in the world of work and beginning to think about how they could acquire the skills needed to tap into that opportunity. So that was really the motivation behind our programme. I'm going to talk you through the programme in a bit more detail shortly, but I thought first of all, it'd be helpful to give a bit of context to the work that we're doing. So some of you will be familiar with the wider city region deal and others know a little less about it. So it's a very ambitious programme, 1.3 billion, as you've probably already aware. And our programme sits within that employability and skills piece, the 25 million that you see on this slide. So we are focusing on one particular set of skills that we're developing for the region. But other aspects of that programme are looking at things like employability opportunities. They're looking at ways in which can make our labour market intelligence more real time. We're looking at how we better work across the employability teams in the city region. And we're also looking at how we develop skills in another emerging sector, which is the housing construction and infrastructure side. So we do sit as part of a partnership team working more widely than just on data-driven innovation skills. Okay, David, are you wanting to pick this up on the slides?
Yeah, Alison, I'm sharing my screen just because the screen share isn't working from your side. So if you just say next slide when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Next slide then, please. So work on our programme began way back in 2017 when DDI convened a working group of experts in data and digital education to consider how best to develop this pipeline of opportunity around developing data literacy skills. So the group included colleagues from across the university. Some of you will know Professor Judy Robertson from Murray House and the School of Informatics. And Janet Roberts from Edinburgh was also very much part of that original team. We developed a business case based on the vision that we agreed at the onset. We carried out some market intelligence, building on the work that the wider DDI team had done to understand the opportunity around data-driven innovation activity. We agreed some objectives and then set out short, medium and long-term goals using logic models and so on to help pull together a business case. It was ambitious. We decided we'd go for Rolls-Royce model, but unfortunately, once the funding was confirmed by the Scottish Government, we did have to tail back our ambition slightly. For example, we had a programme that included a community education dimension to it, but when the funding came in lower than we'd hoped, we had to curtail that. Although we're still looking at other opportunities to get funding from elsewhere to pick that up as the programme develops. Next slide, please, David. So as Richie said, the programme has 4 dimensions to it, and we'll go through each of these in turn. There's the schools programme, which Joe's most heavily involved in, a college programme that involves all 4 of the FE colleges across the region, and then a university dimension that goes beyond Edinburgh University and Heriot-Watt, so involves QMU and Edinburgh Napier University, and then a programme that looks very much at reskilling and upskilling opportunities in the world of work, and that is led by the Data Lab. It's important to say that whilst we report our progress through the skills board of the City Region deal and through the DDI governance process, we also have our own advisory group that consists of representatives from the key government agencies involved in this area. So SDS and SQA are represented on that board. We also have sector leads from creative, financial services and so on. Yarmo, the lead for the DDI programme, sits on that board. And we also have representatives from the business gateway sector and from the third sector, so that we can make sure we're tapping into the audiences we're keen to reach with our activity and make the programme as inclusive as possible. Next slide, please, David. So the value of the programme is nearly 7 million over 8 years. I thought it was helpful just to explain how that funding has been allocated across the 4 strands of the programme. So the lion's share goes to the college programme, followed soon behind with the schools team. It's not huge sums of money, but we're managing to achieve a great deal with this funding. And we are very hopeful that we can leverage in additional funds, and we've already been quite successful in doing that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Next slide, please, David. So the programme was launched in June 2019 at an event called My Data Town, which was held at Pollock Halls. Remember those days when you could bring people together to celebrate activity? Well, the programme was the event was very successful and involved young people from across the city region. The purpose of the event was to get these young people to think about where data is collected in our towns and cities and what use that data might be put to, both for economic and social value. We involved colleagues from the Ush Institute and from the Robotarium, who brought along lots of gadgets and gizmos for the young people to work with. And as well as launching our programme, it has helped inform the content and approach being taken by the schools team. And I'll hand over to Joe now to say a little bit more about that work. Next slide, please, David.
Thank you, Alison. So yeah, we are the Data Education in Schools programme, and we are really the foundation level of the wider DDI Skills Gateway. And the overall aims of our project is to offer opportunities for all school-aged learners across the city region, across the 3 to 18 curriculum, across subject areas, topics and themes, to offer them an opportunity to develop data skills and data literacies. So that brings together a number of different strands of work. So from curriculum development and the development of materials and resources to support that, professional learning opportunities for teachers, partnering with schools on innovation and experimentation with data, as well as partnering with schools on knowledge sharing and community building. Also fostering and developing industry, community and agency partners across the programme for different aspects of the work. And of course, we're based in Moray House, so large part is about making sure that we embed a research informed approach to everything that we do, and to make sure that we have the evidence base that ensures the programme evolves as our understanding of data ethics and society advances as well. So next slide, please. So I'm just going to talk you through some of the kind of areas of work that we've been working on over the last 2 years of this programme. So one first thing that was done was to look where there was existing opportunities across the 3 to 18 curriculum for learners to develop data skills. And they are there. They exist already within the experiences and outcomes, or the E's and O's as they're referred to. They may not be described as data skills, but they are there at all curriculum levels and curricular areas, topics and themes. Things like how you might ask questions of data, how you might gather data that you need, look for patterns in that data and tell the stories that you find in data. So we've been mapping those against framework. We've been using PPDAC framework, which is a curriculum framework in order to map those resources. And so PPDAC is a way of defining the problem solving cycle for using data, from thinking about planning, thinking about problem, which is the first P, to the big questions that you want to ask about data, then to the next P of planning and how you're going to gather the data that you need. What are the questions that you're going to ask? D, how do you manage that data when you have it? How do you clean it? How do you filter it? A, analysis, how do you interrogate that data? How do you analyse it? And what sort of conclusions, the C, do you come from it? Those conclusions may lead you back into new questions and back around the PPDAC cycle as well. So a lot of the materials that we've been gathering, that we've been making available on our website, resource packs for teachers, are mapped into that framework, as well as the curriculum level and curriculum areas. Next slide, please. So, and also another strand of the work has been around establishing professional learning programme for teachers and educators that introduce data skills across curricular subject areas and themes. So we've been developing an online seminar series. Obviously during COVID, everything is online really at the moment, which the aim is to complement those curriculum resources that we've developed and are available for teachers, and to provide that wider context around data skills within each of the curricular themes. So an example is we had an event around music and data called Tune Into Data, which was looking at sonification and how you can represent data musically, to how you look at streaming platforms of music and how artists might use the patterns in that data, the information that they have about their listeners' habits, to inform decisions that they make artistically or pragmatically in terms of marketing. We also had an event looking at data and the arts, so looking at visualization and looking at generative art, algorithmic art projects, and how algorithms can be used to create unique pieces of art. We also had one that was looking recently on census data and election data in anticipation of the May the 6th elections. And we've been working with partners such as Edinburgh to offer teachers workshops around data related services that Edinburgh offer, such as Data Nation, which enables you to use open source data sets such as census data and map that geographically. Next slide, please. And one of the big successes for us this last year especially has been to develop the data science live lessons model, which we feel has been a very successful way of engaging learners, especially in this time of COVID. We've been developing those in partnership with Skills Development Scotland and Digital Skills Education, Craig Steele, who's the mastermind behind a lot of this. And the first one that we ran was called Defend the Rhino, which was a simulated activity designed around tracking poachers in a South African national park, but introducing some of the data science themes around image classification and supervised machine learning. I'm going to show you a little video of a trailer for that event in a moment, but we're also planning our next live lesson, which is going to take place next week, which is called Data Selfies, which is about how you take personal data and represent that in an abstract piece of art, generative piece of art, and then how you can start to think about decoding that the elements of that image to extract that personal data from it. So let's play the video if we can, David, for the trailer for Defend the Rhino. So we've run that twice. We ran it first in November and again in February as a live simulation, but it's also available asynchronously as well for teachers to use the resources with their class in their own time. And we've had a very positive response from that. About 85% have been really positive about it. And also we've had over 2,200 learners use that activity, not only nationwide actually, but also internationally. But so that's one thing that we want to continue to develop, the sort of theme of the live lessons. Next slide, please. Another area that we've been focusing on as well in the last year has been around the National Progression Award. Now, Alison will talk a little bit more, I think, about the Data Who, Data You case studies, but this has been a series of case studies looking at data professionals, data workers, data educators, and this is Kate, who is our Director of Curriculum Development and provides a lot of the expertise across the programme. And in this quote, she's talking about the National Progression Award in data science. She was very heavily involved in the devising of that award, and also ongoing in terms of developing materials for teaching it. And we believe this is the first formal data science qualification available in schools, so it is a really positive first for Scotland. And we've been working, we're working with the Data Lab and with the Data Skills for Work strand to develop teaching resources, learning resources for both this National Progression Award in Data Science and also the Professional Development Award in Data Science, which is an entry-level qualification for mature learners. And so there's lots of crossovers between those. Some of the other related work that we've been doing, so we've been working with Skills Development Scotland on a number of short life projects. One is looking at mapping existing curriculum resources that are currently mapped to the English curriculum, to look at mapping those to the Curriculum for Excellence. Those are resources from the NCCE. And we've also been working with the Scottish Sensory Centre based at Moray House to develop a British Sign Language glossary for data science, cybersecurity and computer science vocabulary, which of course will support one of our really overarching aims of the programme around inclusivity and inclusion and accessibility. We also are working with other UOE partners on projects such as with information services on the Internet of Things programme in schools. And as Alison mentioned, the My Data Town event that we held to launch the programme, we're also looking at developing a virtual version of that, particularly to support this sort of the delay in actually putting the networks into the schools themselves, but looking at how to simulate some of those activities about learning about personal data and community data. And the first pilot of that will hopefully be in May, which will look at weather data and climate data. So I'll hand over to Alison, who will tell you about the rest of the programme now.
Thanks very much, Jo. Next slide, please, David. So I think you'll all agree the schools programme's very impressive, and actually, as Jo said, it's not only gained the notice of people across this region, it's also been well received both nationally across Scotland and internationally. And we have been having conversations with Scottish Government over recent weeks about how we might feed into the recommendations coming out of the Logan Review around school-based computer and data science education. So it's really cutting edge stuff. So thanks very much, Jo. So just moving now to the college programme, you may recall I mentioned that this programme involves all 4 of the region's colleges, and I think it's the first in terms of the colleges working as closely together as they are on this programme. So they worked collectively on a set of resources that they have shared between them, and I don't think that's happened before. So again, another first for the programme. There's several dimensions to the work of the colleges, one of which is around developing data literacy amongst core skills programmes, and the Borders College is leading the way on this. And you'll see on this slide that they've actually been shortlisted for an award for the work they're doing around core skills activity. And it's something that the other colleges are now looking at. So all college learners will effectively be exposed to data science when they enrol in a college as part of that core skills programme. We're also looking at how we can embed data in other subject areas. We are teaching pure data science courses, but to ensure a wider reach, we're looking at how we build that data literacy dimension into a range of subjects. So, for example, at Edinburgh College, data literacy is now part of the HN programme for business, for law and other subject areas. Fife College are building data literacy into their HN across the social science faculty too. And we are teaching these skills both at HE and FE level. There's a module called Big Data that has been developed by Edinburgh College and again shared across all 4 colleges. It's proving to be very successful. So that embedding in other subject areas is something that government are very keen to hear more about, as well as our expertise in delivering pure data science training. And we're also looking at how we can reach the groups we're particularly keen to reach. So those are women, people with disabilities, people from a Black and ethnic minority background who are the non-traditional learners in this space. And we're offering a range of free data science courses to help target those groups, working with relevant third sector and other partner organisations to help bring those client groups to the colleges, but also to support with the learning. So a really good example of that is currently running in Fife College, which is a women returners course being delivered in conjunction with Equate Scotland and supporting women who are thinking about careers in financial services, which have a strong data science dimension to them. We're also running a number of courses for people who are at risk of redundancy or who have been made redundant. We're calling those the in-work courses, and they're looking at how data science could be applied in a range of employment settings. And with that inclusive focus in mind, we are working now with employability providers, such as Access to Industry, to embed data literacy in some of their programmes. So we've got a pilot that's running at the moment that the Data Lab and Edinburgh College are contributing to, working with, as part of the Parental Employment Support Fund from Scottish Government, with a group of young parents to begin their data science journey. We're also funding an associate degree model, which encourages students in Fife and Edinburgh College to move on to degree level learning at Heriot-Watt University. And we're targeting people in the more deprived parts of the city region on that programme to encourage that wider sense of ambition. And then finally, in the college programme, we've just completed a very ambitious programme of staff development, recognising that none of this will be possible without staff developing the skills required to teach these programmes. So a number of the universities and other partners have been contributing to that programme. So next slide, please, David. This slide that's about to come up will just give you a flavour for the amount of activity that's taken place in this first year of delivery of the programme. Really impressive, particularly thinking about the challenges that we've had to face with COVID and the need to move a lot of this to online learning. So we've had 11 students go through the associate degree programme. We've got 23 cohorts studying big data at HE level, 21 cohorts studying data citizenship or data science at FE level across a range of subject areas. We're running 8 of those interwork courses I touched on. We've got 24 learners on the Fife Women Returners course, which means all in total we've got over 1,300 college learners now studying an element of data science. We've also put 362 staff through a range of CPD related activities, a number of which are of several weeks duration. So all in all, a really impressive first year of activity. Next slide, please, David. So the third dimension of our programme is that work in universities that I touched upon, which goes beyond the exciting talent offering that this university and Heriot-Watt are delivering. So Edinburgh Napier got funding to set up and begin delivering the first data science undergraduate course in Scotland with built-in work experience. And that programme has been commended for its approach to equalities, both in terms of curriculum content and assessment approach, but also in terms of the on-campus facilities that will be provided once students can get back on campus for those with particular learning requirements. We're also, like in the college programme, embedding data skills in a range of degree areas. So we're starting that off with the BN, the nursing degree at Napier, and there's also data literacy modules being developed as part of their business study offering. So for example, there's now a course in marketing, research and communication, which has a very strong focus on data science. We're also beginning staff training in other areas in the universities too. Then the third dimension of this programme is the ePlacement Scotland programme, which some of you might be familiar with. It's traditionally been run by Scotland Is, but we've had additional funding from our programme to expand that. And the ambition here is for all diploma level undergraduate and postgraduate data or computer science students to undertake a summer placement or a sandwich year working with local companies. And the motivation for us getting involved in this is that we hope this will encourage more graduates to stay in our city region once they've completed their studies. And again, we're focusing on students from MD 2040 postcodes, people with disabilities and women on that programme. So it's a very ambitious programme here too, although as you saw from the cut of the funding, this is the area that probably is receiving the least funding at this stage. Can we move on to the next slide, please, David? So the fourth and final dimension of our work is the programme being led by the Data Lab. This is called Data Skills for Work, and it's very much around that recognising that the world of work is changing dramatically, and we need people who are working to think about how they might up or reskill so that they are equipped for these new roles. And there's 4 dimensions to this programme. One is identifying the data skills journeys or upskilling that is required. Secondly, providing funding to encourage people to begin on those journeys. Thirdly is signposting effectively so people who are keen to upskill understand the range of offerings available to them. And then developing an open badge system so that their skill sets can be recognised as they develop them. And then encouraging leaders, not just in big companies, but in SMEs, in third sector organisations, to understand the role data can play in their business model and encouraging them to think about the kind of skills programmes they need to roll out in their organisations to take advantage of that opportunity. So next slide, please, David. You've heard us talk throughout the programme of data citizens, data workers, and so on. And this really reflects the fact that we recognise that data literacy comes in many forms. We're not just about developing those high-end data professionals. We want our citizens in this region to understand more about their data footprints and their rights and responsibilities over those. And also to make them better equipped to be effective consumers in a world where more and more services are delivered online. We also, as I've said in the last slide, want people who are working in this region to understand how they can work better alongside devices that are gathering data to help better inform their decision making in the world of work. And then we want our leaders to understand the value that that data can put on their business through effective data collection, interpretation and visualization. So we are looking at skills levels at a variety of stages in that development pipeline. So for each of those levels, we are working out what skills people need to acquire, be that core skills, data management skills, data leadership skills, or whatever. And we are mapping those. Next slide, please, David. We are also, as I said, providing funding to incentivise individuals and organisations to begin to put their staff through these programmes. So if David can get onto the next slide, you'll see that we've supported already in our first year 70+ learners through that data skills credit scheme. We've engaged with 15 employers who are keen to upskill their staff to help them find the most suitable training for their staff. And we've recruited 12 training providers, which is including our colleges and companies like Affini, who some of you might be familiar with, to provide the training that's required. Next slide, please, David. For any of you who've tried to access data training, you'll realise that there's a lot out there. We recognise the importance of effective signposting for our learners, for our employers, and for those delivering the education or upskilling required. So we are working on a skills portal. We're beta testing that at the moment, which will be available not only to people in this region, but more widely to help with that signposting. Next slide, please, David. And like the schools and colleges programme, this is going down really well with government, and the Data Lab team recently attracted an additional £200,000 worth of funding to accelerate this programme. So they've been able to develop more training materials based on that NPA and PDA in data science that Joe talked about. They've created an online version of a leadership training course that we have been delivering in person for SMEs and third sector organisations to help leaders understand how to build that data literate team. And they've got additional funding to expand the data skills credit scheme more widely. So that, again, is another really great success story in the first year of operation. So next slide, please, David. Throughout our programme, we've been focusing very much on inclusivity. We're aware that data science isn't an area that has been particularly attractive to women learners, for example, or to people who are disabled or from other minority groups. And we're trying to, through our communications activity, which our colleague Steph Peebles has been helping us with, to raise the visibility of working in data areas. So we've recently been running a campaign which Joe touched on earlier called Data Who, Data You. And we're trying to use case studies to highlight people who are working in data fields or delivering data training. And you'll see on this slide the team from the Borders College that's been behind that core skills development. We've got a colleague who works at Standard Life who did, I think it was a tourism degree, who saw the value of data within her organisation and began a reskilling programme. We've got a case study from a young man who's on the neurodiverse spectrum, who's a brilliant coder and has begun a reskilling programme to open up a range of employment opportunities for him. And then one of our board members, Jamie Jefferson there, who works in the creative sector, has talked about her journey using data skills within the creative world. So we're intending to run a phase 2 of that campaign to raise the visibility, as I say, of opportunities to non-traditional learners. And we've actually just been doing some work which reported today, so apologies for looking at my notes, but we've been doing some research with SDS on how best we can target the learners we're keen to reach. And I've just got a report in this morning in my inbox explaining some of the recommendations that are coming through from the consultants working on that paper in terms of how we can be more effective in reaching the people we want to reach. So they've talked about things like making data relevant to people's own lives and work, going beyond that, data specialist role and thinking about the data worker. I'm looking at data as part of a wider digital offer, so embedding it in other digital courses that are particularly sector related and engage people in their real world of work. And then looking at tools like gamification as a tool for initial engagement. So that, the live lesson approach that Joe's touched on earlier will be very successful in reaching the audiences we're trying to reach. And there's been a pilot that OU have been developing with Nesta, which was launched earlier this year, focusing on developing cybersecurity skills, but that use that gamification approach. And then continue to develop work experience opportunities for people who are reskilling and upskilling is the final recommendation coming out of that piece of work. We're also now engaging with an EU digital skills programme through an introduction that Yarmo made, and I've got a meeting later this week where we're highlighting our work and hope to reach out to other similar programmes across Europe. And we're refreshing the content of the DDI Skills Gateway so people can easily find out about the work that we're doing. So next and final slide, please, David. So I hope that's given you a flavour of what we're up to. We've gone from, a standing start to delivering some very effective work within a year, and the team has done a great job on that. But we're keen to ensure that our programme is porous. We're working, for example, also with the South of Scotland Digital Hub, with the Tay Cities deal, and with Glasgow Uni looking at partnership opportunities. And I mentioned the conversations that are underway with government around the Logan Review and its recommendations. But we're looking for opportunities to work with other DDI colleagues. We have had our sector leads help us with some of the work in schools, identifying databases that can be used in the curriculum and so on. And Katrina Castle, who some of you might know, is working on a wider regional skills engagement programme, and we're hoping to ensure that those sector-based initiatives have data skills as part of them. So, for example, colleagues in the Usher Institute are working with a number of high schools in Edinburgh, highlighting opportunities in digital health and social care, and data is very much part of the work going on there. And then colleagues in the engineering team are working with Babcock in Fife, again as part of a digital academy proposal. So there's a lot going on, but we're really keen to hear from you. I hope some of what we said today has resonated and made you think, well, perhaps we could get involved in that and bring our sector opportunities to the team. So thanks very much for listening. I hope that hasn't gone on too long, and I hope it's got you thinking about some partnership opportunities.
Excellent, Alison and Joe. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone who's been attending has realised just, I suppose, the scale and the scope, which often with these things, it's a bit like an iceberg. You see the little tip, but you don't realise just how much activity has been going on below the surface. There are a number of questions that have come through. I'll start here. So it's clear that effective partnership has been key to how you've been developing the programme. I was wondering what highlights or learnings you've had from this.
Shall I kick off and then Joe might want to come in? I have to say that all the partners that we've been working with have been incredibly enthusiastic about working in partnership. I think that be that internal colleagues across the university, college colleagues, Scottish government agencies, industry partners. I think people recognise it's a win-win situation. So, there's things that the colleges do a lot better than universities, dare I say, and vice versa. And I think there's a huge amount to be learned from working collectively. So, as I said, we've had university colleagues help with the CPD programme in the college team, but we've also had college partners advising the schools team because they've obviously got experience of schools and college partnership working. So I have to say it hasn't really been a challenge. In fact, the door, people are knocking on our door daily, and I think it's only going to help the programme by expanding on those partnership relationships. Joe, you might want to say something more specifically about the schools program?
All I was going to say is that I think there's that realization that there's a lot of people in this space doing some really interesting and really valid and relevant work, and actually partnering to share that expertise has been really, really valuable. And there is no point in kind of reinventing the wheel, and that's why, you know, things like where there's being curriculum resources developed for the English curriculum, being able to bring them in, but also some of the sort of local partners, like for example Skills Development Scotland, and the wider reach that they have, you know, in terms of, and the experience that they have of doing a similar kind of piece of work around cyber skills, for example, being able to draw on the expertise that they have around how to increase engagement nationally with the qualification like that is really helpful for us in the beginning of that journey with data science. So yeah, I mean it's really positive to bring those partners in.
And I have to perhaps just add that COVID has thrown all sorts of challenges our way, but by working with partners, we've been able to be quite creative in our response. And real credit to Joe and the schools team in how they had to switch the model described in the business case, which was about setting up physical hubs, to an online model. It's been brilliant the way they've adapted to that, working with partners like SQA and others.
Yeah, I was wondering if the past year has it provided an opportunity for certain things that might otherwise not have been done?
I mean, it very much has for us. I mean, from the because it was almost, we were already talking about the practicalities of delivering professional learning online pre-COVID, but the infrastructure and the mindset of online delivery of professional learning wasn't there, and I think COVID has changed all of that. I mean, I think we'll have to sort of tread carefully, I think, when the schools are back, and I think there will be a desire to have a balance between the two, because I don't think you can necessarily you know, completely discount the value of having everybody in a room for professional learning, but certainly in terms of being able to be way more inclusive about who can come along to these sessions, because there's absolutely no reason to restrict it to just participants from, you know, a set of schools or a region, or, you know, even just nationally. So I think that has been really positive, and I think, you know, we will need to think about how we redress that, but I don't think we'll lose that completely. I think also being able to take the recordings that we have of all the valuable contributors to this and being able to remix that and reuse them in different ways, that they provide in themselves a long-standing resource that can be reused in different ways.
Yeah, and I just would add to that this year has highlighted so starkly the importance of digital and data skills that actually it's helped us sell the program in a number of areas. And we have talked as a team about how we use that interest in digital to hook people into the data, you know, angle of it. And people sometimes use the phrases interchangeably, and they're not the same, but they're so closely related. That focus on digital skills has actually helped us reach some of the audiences we might not have reached, I would say.
That's a really useful segue into one of the questions that's come from the floor, which is about what involvement there's been from the private sector. So I suppose from the sort of that demand side, be interesting to hear what you've experienced.
Joe, do you want to start on the schools partnership stuff, and then I can come in?
So there's two aspects to some of the work that we were doing pre-COVID, I would say. One was around encouraging industry volunteers into so industry that have the expertise that's needed in schools around data science, around computing, being able to bring them into a partnership with schools. And I think that will be picked up again after COVID and after things settle down. But certainly we also have been engaging with a number of industry partners around the sorts of data sets that they produce and how we can use those. So we had a project last year with City Fibre, who's a provider of digital infrastructure to the city, about how to incorporate some of the data sets that they use into activities for the National Progression Award in Data Science, so that, you know, there's an actual real world data set to be used in that sense.
Excellent.
And just building on that, the Data Skills for Work team at the Data Lab has carried out an extensive survey of local companies and stakeholders at the start of the programme to understand what their skills requirements will be in coming years. So that has helped inform our offering. We've also had some focus groups working with industry partners to test our data skills framework that I touched upon in the presentation. And those conversations are ongoing. I presented to the SDS Digital Industry Group the week before Logan and Kate Forbes went, actually, to talk to them about the work we're doing. And that has led to some further conversations with people involved in that group. And, you know, I just think that the appetite is there. Industry has been very focused in some areas on firefighting this year, but I think as they are able to raise their heads beyond COVID, we'll get even more engagement going forward.
Excellent. So slight pivot to the next question, and perhaps this is a new opportunity or an emerging one, which is someone's asking about whether the university itself is one of your partners, but from the perspective of actually our colleagues being able to undertake data training. So I suppose internal CPD, is that something that's been considered?
Yeah, we have talked about it actually with ISG at times. Hasn't been a recent discussion, but we've certainly had the discussion during the development of the business case and since then. So there's no reason why we couldn't pick that up, and you know, there are funds available, so okay. Yeah, happy to have the conversation again. Yeah,
good. So people to get in touch. I mean, there's a couple of comments here where people are just highlighting how great it is to see that connection between schools, colleges, the university, and the case studies in particular. And I know that Stephanie's posted the link in the Q&A to the case studies. That seems to be something that has really caught people's imaginations. So that's excellent to hear. Before we wrap up, one of the things that strikes me is this bit about how we, you know, you talked there at the end about this thing about people often conflating data and digital skills. And I was wondering whether there's anything in particular that you're starting to identify about how we help people understand that differentiation, particularly, I suppose, in the journey from sort of primary and secondary education through into tertiary education.
Do you want to send it on the school side, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can't extrapolate the two too much. You require digital skills in order to do some of the data skills. And there are a whole set of data skills that I suppose, or data management, data analysis, that you can do in a kind of an offline way. But I think at some point the two are going to converge. Especially at senior level. But I think so. One of the things that we found with like the kind of the review of the curriculum is that some of those skills are there. They're about the kind of information, understanding what information is, where you find it, what impacts that has on you personally. And that is sort of scaffolded throughout the curriculum in terms of thinking about your own personal safety on the internet. But I think I don't know how much we need to make too big a distinction between the two. I mean, I don't, you know, we have had these conversations a lot about the fact that, you know, the one complements the other. And I think that by looking at how you want to take a data set and how you want to ask questions of it, you can seek out the skills, the data skills and the digital skills that you need in order to do that effectively.
Yeah, I mean, we spent a long time in the original business case stipulating what we meant by data literacy. But actually, as we've come to roll this out, as Joe says, you know, we as a team, we've talked about this endlessly, haven't we, about is that digital, is that data? But the two are so interconnected, and we have managed to reach wider audiences through that digital focus, I would say, since COVID, haven't we? Yeah. So I think we just build the two together, you know, and let's not make artificial distinctions where they don't exist.
And I suppose it's that thing about what is it you're trying to achieve? What is it that you want to do at the end? What does it look like? And there will be an element of all of those data skills, that sort of cycle of analysis and gathering, etc., but there will also inevitably be a digital element to that if what you're trying to achieve is something that's, you know, a digital artifact of some such.
Excellent. I think that's a really interesting, a really helpful observation, which is reminding ourselves that we focus on the outcome rather than the journey, which is always going to take us in a slightly unusual route from the one we might have imagined to start with. So at this point, I am going to wrap up. So on behalf of the DDI programme and all of those who've taken part, I'd like to extend a huge thank you to Joe and Alison for the presentation and the good grace in dealing with the questions that came up. Thank you very much. I'm sure everyone who's attended has learned a great deal more about the diversity of activity that's being performed from the university with partners across the region, the reach it has, the fact that it is attracting interest from a much wider area. So it's not just what's happening in South East Scotland, but also links into the wider borders area and other parts of Scotland. So thank you both very much for your time today. As a reminder for others, we will have another DDI Town Hall on Tuesday the 18th of May. But before then, on Thursday the 29th of April, we have another live event, Open Finance, Ethics and Social Inclusion, which is going to be run. If you go to the DDI website, you can find links to how to register to take part in that. So without further ado, I'll just say thank you to everyone and hope that the rest of your Tuesday goes well. Thank you.